All right, folks. I have 6:30 Eastern time, so we'll go ahead and get started. If you could hear me, if you could let me know in the chat box, please. All right, great. Thank you. So it's been a while since I guess I'll call it since we've talked last. So welcome back to, I guess, a formal gathering with all of us for EDA 604 for our law class. Um, on the screen, obviously, is my email address. I know there's been a few of you various weeks that have ran into questions or concerns or whatever. Please feel free to contact me at my Georgetown College email there. I guess basically a few ground rules. You are more than welcome to speak through the audio if you would like, if you have a question. Otherwise, please feel free to use the chat box. Um, on my screen, the chat box is pretty small, so I hope I don't miss it. Because if like two people were to say something and I don't catch it immediately, I don't see it that well. So it'll move on my screen, but I'll do my best to try and keep up if you run into a question. Um, let's see. So a couple orders of business. First, we're about almost the halfway point of the semester. You know, a lot of these classes are 7.5 weeks. This obviously is a 15-week class, so we're about halfway. Um, Obviously, I think most of you figured out real quick. Moodle was down, I believe, all day yesterday. I think it was back up at maybe 9 or 10 this morning. There were still 5 or 6 of you that had not submitted your assignment for today. So if that is you, um, no harm, no foul. It's not your fault. I can work with you, but if you could try to get that in tonight, if at all possible, the assignment that was due last night. Obviously, since Moodle was down, I can work with you a little bit. Before I forget about it, I'm teaching a different course at Georgetown as well, and just wanted to let you know because some of them have started seeing it. If you get emails from live text saying that you have something due, disregard that right now. I changed the due date anyway, but to make a long story short, in live text, there's a dispositional rubric that I have to fill out on each of you. Dispositions are the characteristics that you exhibit. You know, are you, do you, I'm not looking at it right now, but some examples of things that are dispositions might be, do you, some characteristics that you hold, do you follow up on things? Do you submit things timely and stuff like that? So, I believe this is the first semester that I've been asked to do this on candidates or students like yourself, but it is in live text. You don't need to do anything. Your professor, me for this class, obviously will complete that. So I'm getting students in other classes that'll say as that due date gets closer toward the end of the semester that they'll get an email saying, hey, you have this thing you need to complete, when in all actuality, I'm the one who needs to complete it. So in April or so, you start getting emails on that. You can let me know, or you can disregard them. I'll figure. I will take care of that for you. So before really today, we're going to spend a few minutes kind of looking forward in the semester to make sure that no one has any questions, or if you do, I can make clarifications, make sure that you're clear on everything moving forward for the rest of the semester. But then we're going to spend the majority of our time looking backwards at the course, at some of the content that we've covered. There are a few different things that I want to be clear and make sure that you we're clear on some of the different content. So before we do those two things, are there any questions that anyone has for the good of the order before we get started, either about course logistics or future things in this course or whatever? Again, if you do have a question, please feel free to speak up or put that in the chat box. Okay, as I see none, we'll go ahead and get started then. Last thing then, well, I'll flip over to Moodle here. So I'm on our Moodle class site. Mine may look just a tad different than yours, since obviously I have a professor view of it. I switched it to student view, so it should look almost identical to yours. But so I'm going to scroll down to the info that, yeah, here it is. So under the February 26th through March 4th week, the week that we're in, um, either later tonight or tomorrow sometime, I will remove all this information and then I will put up a link to the recording. So if there were some things that you wanted to review again, um, uh, you can go back to that. I just urge you that when you do watch videos, Internet Explorer, if that's the internet that you use, doesn't seem to show these. Typically, what I'll do is I'll put the recording on YouTube and put the YouTube link on there. So use Chrome or Firefox. Um, okay, so looking forward then, as I said last week, there were, I believe, 5 or 6 of you that had not submitted this assignment. Again, Moodle was down, no problem. Try to get that in tonight if you could. All right, so for this week, you do have a discussion board. There's a lot of different resources that deal specifically with uh, site-based decision-making councils. Want to make sure that you're fully aware of some different SPDM general rules that apply for all public schools. I put the Kentucky laws up there, but the biggest thing is I want you to focus on is SPDM, and then Open Records Request and Open Meetings Act. Obviously, as a public school, your the minutes from your site-based decision-making council meetings need to they're public records, so you need to keep up with those. The only thing that won't be is when the site-based council is in executive session. Um, you don't have to allow the public in that one. So I got a question. I'm sorry, I just got home and don't have access yet. I'll get it ASAP. No problem, Autumn. That's perfectly fine. Whatever you missed, feel free to just watch the recording at a later time. All right. The following week, then, you do need to interview a principal. I encourage you to, if you want to interview your own principal in the building in which you work, that's fine. I would encourage you to maybe find that star principal that you don't typically get to interact with. That way you can get a different perspective. But the questions and everything are on there on the Word document. Set that up. If you haven't already set up a meeting with a principal, you probably need to be doing that very soon. But meet with that principal, complete that interview, and upload those results there. All right, March 12 through 18. All right, you have kind of a two-part thing. You have you pick one of the Supreme Court cases and basically answer some questions on it, and then the other one you pick some different civil rights, Rehabilitation Act, Americans with Disabilities, or Title IX. Pick one of those as well, and answer some questions about it for a discussion board. The week after that, another two-part discussion board that's similar to the week before. Do a lot with freedom of speech and some different laws and information that deals with social media. Obviously, the world we live in, a hot topic. I assure you, if you're a sitting principal very long, you will deal with social media type issues, whether you want to realize that or not. So we'll focus on that week. Then the following week after that, we'll deal with some special education laws and terminology. And then basically you start moving into the final couple weeks of the course. Basically, I hope it'll be a couple weeks yet, but I'll put the, final exam. I will put the final exam up there. It's open book, open note, so to speak, for lack of a better way of saying it. The only rules are you shouldn't work with other students in the course. That would be unethical, but it's going to be content, a lot of different content of things that we've already covered. Basically, it might be some fill in the blank, it might be some short answer, but feel free to look things up online, use any notes. A lot of the different presentations or PowerPoints that were used in the class. will be fair game to use. So basically, put all that information. It'll be a Word document. It'll be one of those that, it won't be one of them time things or whatever. You'll probably have at least a week, maybe 2 weeks to complete it on your own. And when you're done, you'll upload it. Any questions on that? Okay. So now I'm going to flip over to a PowerPoint, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over some information from past uh, past content that we've had. So there's a kind of a variety of different topics here, but please feel free to ask questions on this if you'd like. Again, there's my email address on the slide if you need to get a hold of me. Okay, so obviously this is a law class. This class has a couple different areas that are more than just law embedded in it. Submission and vision, culture, climate type things as well. But I think some best practice. I don't know about you. I need to know the law. I do. As a former school principal, I'm a current human resources director, but I spend quite a few times a week looking at the law. Again, we're not lawyers. You're not expected to memorize it, but you do need to know it. And if you don't know it, you need to be able to know where exactly to access it. So I think best practice is one, have the Kentucky Law Book. It's on Moodle. I'm gonna post this PowerPoint after class with the recording of this. But I think it's best practice that you have the Kentucky Law Book saved on your favorites on your computer. I also think it would be smart for that. Right now, every 2 years they publish the Kentucky Law Book, the big thick book. You need to have access to that. I say check board policies. Not all schools, but most of the public schools have their laws, their board policies posted on the Kentucky School Board Association website. Some other districts do not, but everybody has their board policies published somewhere. You need to have easy access to those. Be very familiar with your handbook, and then obviously, if you're in a public school in Kentucky, have easy access to your SBD and bylaws. I believe best practice would be, you need to read that site-based bylaws word for word the first couple weeks on the job. But have all of those easily accessible at your fingertips at no time. Next, consult your attorney. During difficult times or times when you need to make sure you're right, as I just described, look at site-based policy, look at what the law says, look at what your school district's policies or handbook says. But obviously, every school district has a board attorney. Every district's a little different. In some districts, the assistant superintendent or superintendent in your district may want you to go through them before you would contact your board attorney. So again, that's district by district. I would know what the protocol is for that. In the state of Kentucky, a lot of people are members of the Kentucky Association of School Administrators, KASA. Through that membership, you get access to probably one of the best attorneys when it comes to personnel, specifically for the state of Kentucky, Wayne Young. So through being a member of that, you usually get his email address and his cell phone number. He returns calls usually within a couple hours at the most. He's a practicing lawyer for like 35 years. So again, I strongly encourage you to be a member of KASA if and when you become a school administrator. That way you get access to him. But so basically the moral of the story here is go to the experts. Okay, we spent one of our weeks talking about some of the state agencies, and I want to emphasize this isn't going to be a comprehensive list of everything we've covered in the course. I tried to, as I prepared for tonight, I tried to look back and cover most of the big things. So some of the state agencies, um, first one better known as OEA, the Office of Educational Accountability. Basically, starting in 1991, the legislature in Frankfurt basically, for lack of a better way of saying it, they formed an organization that basically oversees to make sure that public entities or public educational institutions, um, are following rules, so to speak. So if people are not following rules, it could be parents, citizens, employees, others. They have the ability to reach out to OEA, and they will do an investigation on that. They do the best they can on keeping everything confidential, but that is a state agency that we have. Again, remember, if you guys have questions, please feel free to speak up or to put those in the chat box. The next one is the Department of Community-Based Services. A lot of times you'll hear them referred to as DCBS. That's the Cabinet for Family and Health Services. You deal with them with, probably the most common one in my experience as a principal is contacting them when you feel like a child has been neglected, abused, or whatever. If you hold a teaching certificate or principal certification, which still is a certification, you have a duty to report. So, one, as an employee, you need to have a duty to report, but two, as a future principal, that's a very important thing. You need to educate your staff yearly on their commitment and their necessary need to have that duty to report to them. So have those protocols in place. The next one, the Education Professional Standards Board, EPSB, that is the body that obviously hands out the certifications once you complete the programs. And then lastly, the Kentucky Department of Education, the governing body in Frankfurt. If you've not been to their new building, I say new, they've been there I think over a year now, but it's in Frankfurt, a humongous building. I've been there a few times, very nice. I'd encourage you to go over there, but basically everything that helps run our education in the state of Kentucky is run through them. Lots of different contacts over there. So there's our different state agencies. Again, you might have a couple of these show up on your test of, describe for me, and I might list one, or I might ask, what's the entity that is that is over certifications for teachers or something. Should be easy, but that would be something that obviously you need to know. All right, the next detail that is part of this course that you guys spent a different week on was missions, and visions. So a mission is a statement of the overall purpose of an organization, which describes what you do, for whom you do it, and the benefit. I think as many of you mentioned in your submission for that week, many people get those differentiated. I put a couple examples on there of, Nike's mission and Starbucks mission. And then the vision is a picture of the preferred future, a statement that describes the future will look like an organization to fulfill its mission. And I think the biggest thing I want to hit there is as a principal one day, do you need to be able to go around and verbatim tell what your vision is word for word? Not necessarily. But I do believe you need to be able to discuss in your own words and be able to articulate what the vision of your school is. That way, when you speak with different people, you can always take that opportunity to tell what your focus is for the school and what you guys hold important and near and dear to your heart. Would be what I would encourage all school leaders to be able to do. All right, so culture and climate. The school culture is norms developed over time on shared attitudes, values, beliefs, and expectations, relationships, and traditions a particular school has that cause it to function or act as it does. So a school culture over a period of time is basically the history of how things have went and occurred over time. The climate is the communication of its norms, beliefs, and values through various behaviors and interactions. Um, so the climate is the perceptions and emotions that's being evolved. So the research says that positive learning can only take place in a positive culture. A healthy school culture will affect more students and teacher success than any other reform and school improvement efforts currently being employed. So keep that in mind. Um, so keep that in mind as you take over a building one day. That school culture and climate isn't just being a yes man or a yes woman and doing what all the teachers hope you do and all that. It's setting a positive environment that's focused on the right things, doing things the right way. By doing that, um, the research says is you build a positive culture, a culture with doing things the right way, with a strong work ethic, a culture hopefully that's ingrained in they're urgent for kids and they do what's best for kids every time, not necessarily what's best for adults. So once again, something to keep in mind. Okay, so now the next part of this is going to be not a comprehensive details or a comprehensive list, but a lot of details that deal with um, Red Book. And Red Book are basically all of the rules and regulations and format policies, I guess, so to speak, of the rules that they need to be followed for a school's school funds, not the funds, the money that's used at the district office, but the money in which a certain school, um, the school that inside their school that they have the account there at the school for, they write their own checks for and stuff like that. All right, let me see. Looks like I had a question. Liz says, in my paper, I discussed our culture. We've gone through leadership change. Our new leader is changing uh, to lots of guided reading and guided math. Our school is still very divided and negative as it was in the past. How long does it take to change culture after change? It's a good question. I don't know there's necessarily a perceived this is how long it'll be, but it's I would say it's probably going to take a couple years because it's got to become the new norm, so to speak. Although your new principal may be asking of those things this year, that's not the new norm yet. Because and it's going to be a little different for different people. Some people, are going to be compliant and do whatever the principal asks, but some of them will do it because they see the benefit in it. Others will do it because they're going to do whatever the boss says. Then you're going to have other people that they're going to take a while before they see the light, and they're going to do everything in their power to do the bare minimum or uh, to follow that change. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's at least another full year, and it really depends on how long your principal continues to see this through, continues to stand on this soapbox. From what you're telling me, it seems like a positive thing, but obviously I'm not in your building. Um, there's lots of different variables that come in there of the way in which they're holding people accountable to do that, all those types of things. But until it becomes a new norm, it may take a while. Yeah, change has a lot of resistance at times. Even if the change is obvious that it's going to be good for students, you have times that people resist that change because it's easier for adults to not change. So um, you know, I think these are times in the teacher's role to be able to sit back and watch your principal, watch he or she to see how they go about implementing that change. They're going to do some things that are great. They're going to do some things that might be a mistake. Learning from some of those things that do well will be helpful to add to your toolkit of leadership moving down the road, and some of the things that they maybe not do so well. That way you can learn maybe now how to do it, how you should not do it as well. But I would encourage you on something like this to do your best to support your leader on that one, because as I'm sure you guys are figuring out, it's a tough job. So back to the finance thing. So going over Red Book, I'm going to spend some time going over some of these details. As a principal, I encourage you to, most districts in my experience, usually provide a Red Book training for all principals and bookkeepers at least once a year. As you become a seasoned principal, a lot of times, they might only make some of the newbie principals do it. But I find that in Red Book, these rules, especially because it changed maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe, there were a lot of changes to it. A lot of these laws and regs are not followed very close. Let's face it, folks, you have an auditor that comes in every year. They review all these things. They write up for things that are not followed. You know, obviously you shouldn't be stealing. You're going to get yourself fired for something like that. But, I've seen a lot of principals get in a lot of trouble because they have difficulty making sure their school follows some of these. So I want to say again, this is not a comprehensive list, but this is a lot of the common things that deal with Red Book. Again, the accounts in the school they have, not funds that are used at the district office. So Red Book requires that all collected money to be turned into the bookkeeper daily. You would think that would be easy. I'll bet in most of your schools right now, someone today collected money and they just opened their top drawer and they tossed it in there. And as the principal, you are required, you are the one that sets the tone in that building, and you need to make it very clear up front that money is turned in every day to the bookkeeper. Always write pre-numbered receipts the day the money is collected and turned into the bookkeeper. The bookkeeper shall never collect money from a parent or student, nor shall the bookkeeper open the mail. Okay, so we don't want them opening the mail, because if the bookkeeper is the one committing fraud, we don't want them being the one that may get checks out of the mail. We don't want them being the ones that get your school bank statements and things like that. So these are things that you'll need to enforce. Something as simple as the practice that I always had as a school principal was, when it's a bank statement, you can tell by the size of the envelope and the return address and stuff on it. It'll say in the top left-hand corner. But she didn't open it. She brought it to me. I opened it, and then on the bank statement, I always put the date of the day that I opened it, and I put my signature or my initials on there. Again, auditors will look for that. That says that, okay, my bookkeeper's name was Pam. Pam wasn't the one who did that. Dustin was the one who did that. So teachers and sponsors should use multiple receipt forms. All receipt has, a couple carbon copies of it together. You should always use the checks the day they come in the mail. When I say use those, you should be depositing those checks. Students from third grade on up are the ones that sign the multiple sheet form when, basically when I say this is when like a teacher collects money. All right, we're going on the field trip. Everybody's supposed to bring in $3. All right, the teacher collects those $3 from each student. If it's third grade on up, it's expected that third grader write his or her name in there and put the $3. Add all that up when they're done and submit that to the bookkeeper that day. If it's preschool, first or second grade, what we try to do is let the teacher handwrite the name and ask that student I always try to ask the student to put their initials to it or something. Auditors are usually a little bit more lenient on that one, but most first or second graders, if you tell them their initials are DB, put a D and a B next to it, they can make that work. Two-part mobile receipt form suggested, as I mentioned, and a copy of the mobile receipt is given back to the person turning in along with the pre-numbered receipt. So basically how it should look is every single day that a teacher collects money, they take it to the bookkeeper. They say, Pam, here's the $50 that I collected. Here's the $50 from the multiple receipt form that I'm submitting. You should be keeping a copy of that multiple receipt saying that you did it, that you turned it in. That bookkeeper's supposed to count that money right in front of you, and they should give you a receipt back. Is how that should work. And then you, as the teacher, then should keep that receipt, your carbon copy and the receipt together, and then they'll let the bookkeeper go do her thing. So what should that bookkeeper do then? Well, we'll answer that here in a moment. It might be this slide here. So when it comes to receipts, each school should only has one interest earning checking account, and it should be from a board approved bank. So to keep it to one. Only exceptions for schools for charitable gaming, meaning I'm not going to spend a lot of time going at it, but a lot of your high schools might do some things, charitable gaming as in gambling. It might be like a split the pot type thing and all that. A lot of rules that come with that. For the interest of time, I wasn't going to go on all those today though. Investment funds must be reported in a monthly annual report. So if any of your accounts do earn any interest or anything like that, they should keep track of those. Deposit slips. Checks have to be listed or make copies of all checks. So basically, the most common way is when you deposit all those, you list all the checks on that form. Shall note the receipt numbers of deposit slips. Shall have two-party verifications, initial of a person verifying. So what's that mean? That means if the bookkeeper has some deposits that they put on to make a deposit, to make sure that everything goes correctly, there needs to be somebody else that checks all those and initials off on them to make sure they're all there. So basically, it's checks and balance. You don't want one person collecting all the checks and making all the deposits. You have someone who checks all those to verify. So basically, it's more difficult for someone to commit fraud when two people are involved. All money should be deposited daily, but there are a couple exceptions. If daily deposits are less than $100, you may put those. That bookkeeper may put those in a secure location until $100 is collected. Money collected after school business hours or events shall be placed, again, a safe place. So let's say it was a football game, and football game done until 9:30. Obviously, there's no bank that's open, so put that in a safe place. But at a minimum, the deposit should be made weekly if there's less than $100. So if the $100 or more, those should be taken to the bank daily. And if it's less than $100 in that total week, they need to, at minimum, be making that deposit once a week then. Simple things that are not followed, and an auditor will eat not just the bookkeeper, but they'll eat you as the principal up one day if you don't follow some of these. School is not a bank, so you shouldn't be cashing checks. You might be chuckling right now. You'll be amazed that people will, I don't have any lunch money. Can you cash a check for me? No, the answer is no. Blame Redbook. Charging return check fee is allowed. All student fees and charges shall be adopted by the school board. So whatever your school fees are, you have to get the school board's approval for that, whatever those school fees are. And then try to maintain proper segregation of duties. Again, you don't want your bookkeeper doing everything. That's why there's practices in place for someone else that signs off for those. It's where the principal needs to be the one that opens all mail, opens bank statements and things like that. Fundraising, in my experience, the thing that people make the most mistakes on deals with the fundraiser, because usually with fundraisers, there's typically a lot of money coming in, a lot of products going out, whether that be cookie dough or spirit cards or whatever it would be. So make sure a fundraiser approval is to be prepared before any fundraiser. So before anything's done, any organization, the STLP club wants to do, they do the Valentine grams or something at Valentine's Day. They have to get the principal approval before that. If it's a school-wide fundraiser, they got to get board approval. Principal approves all fundraisers and the use of the funds. So not just to decide, you're not just approving what the fundraiser is, but you also have to prove what those monies are being collected for, to see that that is what they're actually going to be used for, the money. Um, those funds need to be raised for the purpose that's indicated. Um, fundraising activities should benefit students. They're not to cover payroll for, for somebody. Hey, school, we really need some extra custodial work. We're going to do a fundraiser to do that. That's illegal. Fundraising has to be done for students, not for payroll costs, not for operating costs. Hey, our copy machine broke, and we're going to need to raise some funds to purchase another copy machine or rent a copy machine. That is not allowed. Um, and you can't supplement a staff account. So basically, it's got to be used for kids. Fundraising proceeds must benefit the entire group and not individual accounts to be tracked. So basically, the football team can't do a fundraiser, and each player, the coach can't say, listen, each of you have to raise $100, and if you don't raise $100, then you have to pay the difference. It doesn't work that way. Even though the whole football team might be doing it, that money, if I raise $1 and you raise $1,000, all of our money goes into the pot equally, and we're treated equally on how much everybody contributes. So there's no, the more you raise, the less you have to do. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You are required to have an approval form for any magazine sales. I know that sounds odd, but that is the law. You do that through the county clerk. There is specific fundraiser worksheets and inventory control worksheets. I don't want to get too far down in the weeds here, but realize, I think the biggest thing here is I want you to realize that there are rules to be followed. There are processes to be followed. I promise that the day you get a principal job, you need to ask your financial officer, treasurer, whatever you want to call he or she in your district, for help. I promise the superintendent is going to make it a priority that they educate you on some of these things. Um, I can tell you, I didn't get any kind of red book training like this when I took college classes to be a principal like that. So I hope you find that beneficial. The inventory control worksheets, you'll find this to be a big pain. Even though you might not be the one who does it, you will need to make sure that it does. Basically what that is I remember my first year as an elementary principal, we had a machine in our school that sold pads of paper and pencils. Well, basically, you had to keep track of that inventory every month. How much money came in, how many pencils and pads of paper were left in the machine at each month to basically reconcile each month. And we got wrote up the first year for it, and I was like, this is a pain. I know our kids want pencils and pads of paper, but we had more important things to oversee than how many pencils were left in that pencil machine. So I got rid of it. But you do have to do these things monthly. And basically, each time money's collected for these activities, again, there's a specific form that has to be used. So again, just be aware of that, I guess. Ticket sales. So if there's a ball game and you guys have you sell tickets for it, you have to have pre-numbered tickets. You keep unused tickets in a secure place. There's a specific form for keeping track of that. Basically, you put you tear, the pre-numbered tickets usually have the ticket number on there twice. You staple the first one to it. You keep track of all of them. If each ticket's was cost $2, you put all the number of those on there, and then you number the last ticket on there. So basically, you have a first number, a last number. It should reconcile how many tickets are in between times $2 each, and all that's done together. Again, the bookkeeper is not allowed to be one that sells the tickets. Why? Because he or she is going to be the one that's going to be receiving that money when all the ticket sales are done to deposit that. And you don't want the same person that makes the deposits be the one that's collecting, because that gives them opportunity to pocket the cash, and you don't want that to happen, obviously. 2 people required to work the gates. Typically how that works is is one person sells the ticket. So John comes up, I'd like to go into the football game. It costs $2. You take John's $2, you give him the ticket. That's the first person. The second person takes that ticket and they go to the next person and they hand that person the ticket. They rip it in half. They keep one ticket, a half of it. They give it a half back to them. Unfortunately, I've went to lots of ball games where this process isn't followed. Just realize though, at the principal in your school building, you will be expected for enforcing these type of things to happen. If money's collected after business hours, again, money can be locked up. You're supposed to give that money the first business day after the event, and you are allowed to keep some change money kept in a secure location till the end of the season. Obviously, for you need to have a little bit of cash on hands. Especially lots of 1s and 5s would be appropriate. Okay, so next is expenditures, money that you spend at the school. Again, you're going to have your own ability to write checks. So money expenditures, money spent, some different stipulations on this. Again, you should have pre-numbered checks. You should not have any signature stamps. A lot of times that may sound easier, but you want to have it where 2 people sign those checks, and you don't want someone to have the ability to sign for you. So typically it's a principal or a designee and the bookkeeper, so 2 people sign each check. Trying to hit the highlights here for time purposes. Checks should not be written for cash or to the bank. To get cash, should not be doing that. So if you see, when you check those bank statements and you see cash written on any of them, now you need to be asking your bookkeeper what's going on there and checking the signatures of those copies of those checks on your bank statement when they come in. Obviously, you have schools are exempt from paying sales tax, so make sure you're not paying any sales tax. If an employee does buy something, you cannot reimburse them for sales tax either. Purchasing, we're about done, folks, I promise. But so basically, bidding is a local board's responsibility for like items purchased within the district over $20,000 must be bid. So just because you are, a common one we'll see in districts, Walmart. Listen, why do they keep, not letting us buy from Walmart? We're only trying to buy. We're only spending $4,000 a year. Well, in our district, we have 17 schools. If each school spent, $1,500, we would be over $20,000. So basically, you have to watch that because it's not just school-wide; it's district-wide. And if they spend $20,000 on like items or at one specific company, that needs to be bid out. Then that's the law. All purchases shall be made in accordance with the board's policies. Every single expenditure or purchase should be documented on a purchase order and completed and filled out before the purchase is made. The principal should not be a vendor on a purchase order. The only exception would be like getting travel expenses would be the exception, and they reimbursing them for their travel for food or lodging or something like that. Purchase orders should be prepared and approved by the sponsor or the principal before the payment's obligated. When you purchase something and those items come in, there should be a receipt come with it. The person who received those products should sign and date and take that receipt and give it to the bookkeeper then. And each disbursement shall be documented on a complete purchase order. We talked about that. Last couple of things, credit cards. I advise against them, but if your board allows them, you obviously can. It gets people in a lot of trouble sometimes. If you do have a credit card, make sure you keep it locked up until it's needed. Have a definite process for signing that credit card in and out. No purchases of the card without a purchase order. Like any other purchase you use, still have to have a purchase order. Employees shall be responsible for reimbursing any charges made without prior approval. So enforce that. And receipts turned in with the credit card immediately after the purchase is made. All right, reporting. So you do have lots of different reports that are done on a monthly basis. Your bookkeeper obviously will be expected to deal with those, but they deal with account balances. Basically, your school funds. You shouldn't carry excessive balances from your different school funds. I'm talking about different school funds inside your school. Um, so I understand that we want to be good stewards of money, but remember, especially if students fundraise for these, or you collect fee money from students for that school year, that money needs to be spent on those kids that year. There's no sense in hoarding all that money when those students either paid those fees for that school year, or those students helped fundraise for something for that school year, and then you hoard it. That money should that was raised, or the fee money was intended for those kids for that school year. So trying to get in the best practice of using it during that school year. No individual account can be left in a deficit, be negative any school year. And if that were to happen, you have to use some of your other funds to compensate for that. You are not allowed to have any negative balances. So if that were to occur, then you need to transfer some money from a different fund in there. And if your entire school, all your school funds are negative, then you'd have to take some district funds and transfer them over. As I talked about already, principal should be the one that reviews the bank statement before the bookkeeper gets it, and sign and date it. Okay, folks, so that is, for the most part, it. I tried to intentionally think about some of the hot topics or the big things I wanted to make sure for the first half, to make sure and reiterate, to emphasize a few important things for the first half of this. Remember, the second half, you have a few assignments, an interview with a principal, and then an open book, open note, so to speak, test. Before we jump off here, folks, we've been together, it looks like about 45 minutes. Are there any last questions that I can answer for the good of the order, to make sure anything's clear for anyone moving forward? Okay. Again, I'll put this recording up. It'll probably be tomorrow morning sometime. I'll put this recording up if you need it again in the future. Again, my email address is on the page there. Feel free to contact me if I can help you in any way. If you haven't submitted your assignment for this week, since Moodle was down yesterday, please try to do that tonight if at all possible. I'll stay behind if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, folks, have a great week, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.